Okay, let's open a word of prayer. Lord, thank you for this day. Pray that you'll bless our time together today as we discuss some very volatile issues facing our world today. Pray that you'll help us to remain confident in the hope that we have in you as our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Bless us today. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I usually start out with an intro, and maybe I'll go back to that a little bit. But today, I sometimes look at other channels that do this, and some of them, everything is breaking, everything is urgent, everything is exclusive. And so I don't have anything exclusive today, but I do have something breaking that happened a couple of hours ago. A helicopter carrying President Raisi of Iran made a hard landing in northwestern Iran. I've been looking after I preached first hour, so some people pointed this out to me. So I was looking at some videos of what happened, the weather conditions in northwest Iran, which is Iran is a very mountainous country. It's essentially a fortress almost type country because it's very difficult for somebody to invade. That's why they've not really been taken over that much by people in their history. They've taken over a lot of other people, but it's hard to attack them on the ground because of the mountainous terrain that essentially surrounds the country, or a large portion of the country. But the weather is very bad. It's very foggy. Visibility is very low. They have sent ambulances. I've heard that as many as 40. Well, here, this is just the report from Press TV, which is an Iranian news channel. Iran's Interior Minister Vahidi has confirmed that a helicopter carrying President Ibrahim Raisi made a hard landing in the city of Jolfa in the northwestern Iranian province of East Azerbaijan. The helicopter was transporting President Raisi and Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian and several other passengers when it encountered difficulties and was forced to make a hard landing near Jolfa, a city bordering the nation of Azerbaijan. The incident happened at Dizmar Forest between these cities of, you don't need to know them. 1 hour after the incident, rescue teams had reached the area and started search operations. At least 40 rescue teams have been deployed to the region, but due to the difficult terrain and bad weather conditions, the search and rescue operation will take time, authorities said. Drone units are also assisting with the emergency operation. There were two other helicopters in the group that were flying, but they have all returned and landed safely. So this on the right is a post that somebody put on social media. Pray for the martyr Raisi. Western development or Western intelligence sources have said that they do not think he survived. That would also be the foreign minister, who you see, and in fact, you'll see some pictures of him later in my update of meetings that he was involved in this week. So this is a big deal. There is also we talk about war and that type of thing, and we just never quite know what causes the war. But you sort of think about historically, back in 1914, the Crown Prince of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire was murdered, assassinated in Sarajevo, later Yugoslavia. And that was really the catalyst that led to World War II. As I'm looking at different stories, for example, there's a series of articles, 10 Steps to World War III from the U.S. Sun, that goes through and analyzes what's going on in the world. So I mentioned the apparent death of Raisi. We don't know for sure yet. Raisi, by the way, is a very evil man. The Jerusalem Post has an article up that says it's hard to imagine a worse person to be president of Iran, the main enemy of Israel. But I think they could probably find someone. We know from Daniel chapter 10 that there is apparently a demonic entity that's behind Persia, Iran. I think that is operative even today. We've talked about that in recent weeks. When Daniel had a vision, he eventually encountered Michael, and Michael said, "I've been trying to get to you for 3 weeks, but I was resisted by the prince of Persia." It gives you a little bit of some information about the spiritual warfare that goes on, and we talk about that in the context of Ephesians chapter 6. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. And it's a little bit hard to understand, but it appears, that if there is this demonic entity behind Persia, that demonic entity would be a lot worse today than he was at the time of Daniel. He's been able to acquire a lot of knowledge and information in the meantime. And I think that's clear. So we have this incident that led to World War I. Now we have what appears to be the death of Raisi. Somebody just sent me something about President Biden has been summoned to an emergency meeting at the White House. We can only assume that that's the reason for it. And what are the implications? What's going to happen? I mean, the world is in a very volatile circumstances. This week also, this is headlines from newspapers in Slovakia. The prime minister of Slovakia was attacked in an assassination attempt by someone who had a beef. And I don't know why the guy did it. Okay, I haven't seen good information as to why this guy did it, whether he was alone. Of course, immediately everybody says, well, he's a lone wolf. There are some people, the Slovakian prime minister was not a fan of the Ukrainian position. So as people say, no, Ukraine did it. But then he had also come out opposed to this pandemic treaty that the World Health Organization is trying to put in place. So a lot of people would have liked to seen him out of office. Were they behind this or not? We don't know right now, but understand that in a volatile situation in the world, any one of these things can be a trigger for something much worse. My concern has been, I think that there's been a hope that there could be regime change in Iran and everything would get a lot better between Iran and Israel and other countries in the world, including the United States, who the Iranian government views as the great Satan, Israel being the little Satan. But I don't know that it would get better if you took out the Ayatollah or Raisi or anyone else, because you still have a very powerful Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps that's there that could take power, and they would be worse, I think, than the Ayatollah. Raisi himself was an incredibly evil man. There was a time in his early career where he caused the execution of perhaps as many as 5,000 innocent Iranians. And his nickname was the Butcher of Baghdad, and he deserved that nickname. So here in the lower left-hand corner, you see the Iranian foreign minister, and then there's an imam that died, and also governor for one of the provinces of Iran. And Azerbaijan itself is a very volatile area. I mean, there's been a lot of conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Russia's involved on one side, Iran on another. And so the whole area there is just a powder keg. And is this a spark that's going to ignite that powder keg? I do not know. So I'm going to go back a little bit through my intro now that we've seen that. But likely it appears that Raisi has not, the likelihood is that Raisi has not survived. If I could give you, I might have a map here. I didn't have anything prepared for this, I can tell you that. So, so when we look at this is an Ezekiel 38 map. So if you look up here near Tubal, northwest Iran would be just south of where it says Tubal on this map. And that's, again, a mountainous region that is volatile even before something like this happens. So we'll just have to see what happens, and I'll continue to monitor it, although I'll probably be paying attention to try to have words come out of my mouth during this. And so this is what we talk about. And so this is a good example of the world that we live in. Things change very rapidly. When we look at things happening in terms of end times Bible prophecy, this is a grid that I came up with some time ago. Probably 4 or 5 years ago. Acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding. Let me just explain. I know I talk about it all the time. But as we get closer to the return of the Lord, things are going to happen more quickly. There's going to be an acceleration. And if you look at what happened at the first coming of Jesus as a pattern for what's going to happen before the second coming of Jesus, you get a better sense of this. So there are many prophecies related to the first coming of Jesus. 60% of those prophecies, roughly, were fulfilled in the last week of Jesus' first coming. And remember, Jesus' first coming extended over a period of time. He was born, lived, died, ascended, that sort of thing. So it didn't happen in a moment, but in terms of the prophecies related to that first coming, about 60% of them fulfilled in the last week, we call the Passion Week, from the entry into Jerusalem till his crucifixion and resurrection that took place during that week. And then we have a convergence, and we have a lot of different lines of Bible prophecy. I've tried to boil them down, distill them down to some people, like I think Chuck Missler used to have a list of 10 items that he would look at. And now I'm not so sure that it should be 10 items, it should be 20 or 30 categories. And I try to categorize them, but it's such a changing, moving target that it's hard to do that. But all of these things are happening and in play at the same time. So that's the convergence thing that I talk about. And then logistics, that's a little bit more esoteric, but the prophecies that we see laid out in Scripture are going to unfold in a real world. So when it talks about wars, Jesus talks about the birth pangs in Matthew chapter 24, wars and rumors of wars, pestilence, deception, that type of thing. Those things are, they have to have a foundation to them. They have to have something built up. The one example that I would use is Babylon. Babylon, believe me, very controversial as to what this final Babylon that's talked about in Revelation 17 and 18 is. Believe me, you should check my email because there are a lot of different opinions. So some people think it's the United States, New York City, Washington, D.C., and people go through the scriptures and they make the case for that. I take a more open view that I'm aware of all these different ideas, and at some point we're going to be able to say, okay, this is it. I'm not sure I'm comfortable making that declaration right now. And I get emails and books and audio, videos and that type of thing about the different views, and everybody is sure that they're right. So when you have several different views and everybody's sure that they're right, I sort of take the view is that, well, maybe we just don't know yet for sure. I think that's a reasonable conclusion. So I think we need to look at these different views, but I just think it's a little bit too, I'm just not comfortable saying, okay, this is that which was prophesied. I think that's a very difficult declaration to make. I think that we need to be very careful making such a declaration, because what happens if I get up here and say, the United States is the Babylon of final prophecy, but we look and this destruction of Babylon appears to occur near the end, Revelation 17 and 18, and the United States is destroyed in a nuclear war now, how do you square those two? Because they seem to be opposed to each other. But, the United States, of course, then some people say, well, the United States is a daughter of Babylon, which you can make the case for that. Then there are some people who think that Babylon could be something like Neom, a to-be-built city or city that's in the process. And so I talked about Neom as a possibility, and now they're saying, well, we're maybe not going to build so much of that. We're going to scale that back. Okay, but my point that I think is valid on that is that when God destroyed Babel in Genesis chapter 10, 11, it wasn't finished when it was destroyed. So it could be something that's in the process of being built. And then there is a lot of people that hold the view that Babylon's going to be where Babylon was in Iraq. And that's fine. And that's where I sort of throw in the logistics thing is, okay, if it's going to be this great commercial city that everybody's going to mourn, the Babylon in Iraq is not that. It's just not there yet. Now, there are, Iraq is making contracts with China on gas and oil. They're doing some building down in that particular area. So maybe that's it. Honestly, I don't know. I'll be very honest with you. So it's one of the things I have my United States basket, I have my Iraq basket, and then I have this other basket that I kind of put things in. And then some people say it's Rome, and some people say it's Jerusalem is the final Babylon of Bible prophecy. And people are very passionate about their view on that. I have problems with that view that it's Jerusalem. That's just me. And then understanding, and we have this verse in Daniel that talks about the fact that books are sealed up till the time of the end. And then as we get closer to the end, there's going to be this understanding that people have so they know what's going on. And it says here, the wise will understand. So we want to study and look at the passages of Scripture. So I don't go through the Scriptures every week because I think you have a basic framework that you're going to look at these things through. And there's enough to talk about. That sounds bad if I say that. There's enough stuff to talk about without getting into the Bible. And I don't think that's not a very good way to say that. So don't pull that out and shove that in my face. So a lot of things going on culturally in the world. This is kind of an interesting thing. Now, when I play the clip of this guy or anybody's clip, I don't endorse all of their views. I play it because I use clips because I want you to hear what the person had to say. I don't want to get into a situation where, well, John Haller said that the person said this, but I don't think the person said this, and we get into a big argument that, okay, well, let's look at the clip, and we can all make a judgment. So this guy is Harrison Butker, and he is the kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, which has won the last 2 Super Bowls, and he gave an address to a Catholic college in Kansas City, and here's just a few minutes of his graduation speech. And I'm only playing this not to endorse everything that he says or believes or that his theology is correct, but I admire what he said. Here we go.
Throughout the COVID fiasco, and how you missed out on so many milestones the rest of us older people have taken for granted. While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values and media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns, to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic. This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. These are the sorts of things we are told in polite society to not bring up. You know, the difficult and unpleasant things. But if we are going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition. We must always speak and act in charity, but never mistake charity for cowardice. It is safe to say that over the past few years, I've gained quite the reputation for speaking my mind. I never envisioned myself nor wanted to have this sort of a platform, but God has given it to me, so I have no other choice but to embrace it and preach more hard truths about accepting your lane and staying in it. As members of the church founded by Jesus Christ, it is our duty and ultimately privilege to be authentically and unapologetically Catholic. Don't be mistaken, even within the church, people in polite Catholic circles will try to persuade you to remain silent. There even was an award-winning film called Silence, made by a fellow Catholic, wherein one of the main characters, a Jesuit priest, abandoned the church and as an apostate, when he died, is seen grasping a crucifix, quiet and unknown to anyone but God. As a friend of Benedictine College, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron said in his review of the film, "It was exactly what the cultural elite want to see in Christianity: private, hidden away, and harmless." Our Catholic faith has always been countercultural. Our Lord, along with countless followers, were all put to death for their adherence to her teachings. The world around us says that we should keep our beliefs to ourselves whenever they go against the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We fear speaking truth because now, unfortunately, truth is in the minority. Congress just passed a bill where stating something as basic as the biblical teaching of who killed Jesus could land you in jail. But make no mistake, before we even attempt to fix any of the issues plaguing society, we must first get our own house in order, and it starts with our leaders.
Well, so the response of the city of Kansas City, where the Chiefs play football, said, hey, he doesn't live here. He lives in a suburb. And then they took it down because you should not, they were doxing him so that people would look him up and find him and harass him. And so I don't endorse his views of the Catholic Church and that type of thing. I want that to be clear. And I'm not sure he's correct on his view that the bill that passed the House would put you in jail for saying who killed who or quoting scripture about who put Jesus to death. And I think I've mentioned that in some interviews that I did and that type of thing. I think it's a bad bill. I think it's unconstitutional for a number of reasons, and there's some Supreme Court cases coming that may make it even more so. So in the light of this, in the world, can we agree, I feel like one of my law school professors, can we agree on this, people? We have to be in agreement on this before, are you with me or not? Are we in agreement? The world is in a very volatile condition right now. There are a lot of trigger points, as I mentioned, with the apparent demise of President Raisi of Iran and the foreign minister of Iran. I don't know what that means. Could it calm things down? Yeah. Could it really ratchet things up? I think that's probably more likely because, listen, it's not going to be an accident. It's going to be an incident, you know what I mean? That maybe somebody caused, and there are going to be repercussions to that. But in light of that, this is what one of the lights on Friday afternoon, somebody said at the State Department of the United States, said this is what we need to post. LGBTQI plus persons deserve, I think they left some alphabet letters out of that soup, deserve recognition of their universal human rights and human dignity on IDA Hobbit. No. And every day, the United States stands with LGBTQI plus persons around the world International Day Against, oh, that's what it is. International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Interphobia, and Transphobia, which was Friday. And I missed it. And it's a volatile world. We saw the northern lights that came through. And a lot of theories about what caused them. I think it was probably something from the sun. The sun sends out a tremendous amount of energy. It would take thousands of power plants to put out the energy of one sunburst that can come through. And I just don't think we have those power plants we're already running out of power in the world. Apparently we're running out of it more quickly because I get these notices from AEP that I'm not using too much. I'm not doing a very good job. And there seems to be a lot of incidents involving the power grid. For example, this is a picture of a power grid, fairly famous power grid down in Texas, in the Houston area. That's what it looked like the other day. They had some windstorms, and now it kind of looks like that. I heard millions of people without power, some of them maybe without power for weeks, a lot of rain. They're having a major problem with mosquitoes now. People don't have air conditioning, they don't have power. And let me tell you, I love my friends who live in Houston. I've spent a lot of time in Houston. I actually interviewed for a job in Houston back in 1985, so almost 40 years ago. And we were thinking about moving there. We went down for the weekend. A law firm flew me down for the weekend. The interesting thing about that was the weekend we were there, they got 10 inches of rain. That's probably not what the Chamber of Commerce had in mind. But what kind of bothered us about it as we're talking about this on the way home is like, nobody acted like that was unusual. You know, you get 10 inches of rain over a weekend in Ohio and you're not going anywhere for a long time because it's flooded. And down there, it was just sort of like, well, this happens it's not unusual. I'm like, I don't know if I want to live a place where 10 inches of rain is not unusual. So they're having a lot of trouble with mosquitoes. This is some of the downtown buildings in downtown Houston had the glass blown out. I remember I tried a case in Fort Worth a number of years ago, and probably 25 years ago. And after that, the Bank One, then what was called the Bank One building, got hit by a tornado and pretty much destroyed. I had a friend whose law office was in that building. They had to move over to Dallas because the building was destroyed. It was unoccupied for years till they got it recovered. So that's a thing. We have water problems. Now, food you can get by without for a while. And I know somebody will say, I could go longer than other people. I'll acknowledge that. I've often joked with my friends, family members who have those 13.1 and 26.2 stickers on the back of their car. You know what that means? That means a half marathon, 13.1 miles, and 26.2. And then I was following some guy, he had 100.8. And I'm like, okay, so look, when the famine comes, make a note of where those people live. And if a famine comes, you know that they're not going to make it because they don't have a reserve. But here, water is even more of an issue because you're not going to survive more than a few days without water. And here, Mexico City, the largest or second largest city on the planet, is having water problems. The reservoirs drying up, wells are drying up, people don't have the water. And so when you have a city of, 30 million people, and you don't have water, you have potential problems. Another country that has massive water problems is Iran. Their reservoirs are dried up. There are inland, I can't remember the name of the sea. What's the name of the sea that used to be in Central Asia? That's pretty much gone because of drought. This is happening everywhere. The most water-challenged country on the planet, by the way, is Jordan, which does play into Bible prophecy. You know, Ammon, Moab, and Edom is talked about. So that's another thing that we should pay attention to, is these natural disasters that are coming about. And some will say, well, they're not natural, they're all man-made. I don't think they're all man-made, but some of them may be. And there does seem to be this issue right now of running out of resources. We have power grid problems. We have lack of resources. We have inability to get the resources from one place to another. And some of that is man-made and man-caused. And when you look at it, it's sort of like, why are they doing that? It's almost like they don't want us around, is a logical conclusion to this. And that may very well be the case. Then you have technology. This is a South Korea, a drone show. Now, it's pretty, it's cute, it's interesting. Ooh, ah, look what they're able to do with drones. But understand that if you can do that for a show, you can do that for a military purpose. That's what you ought to apply. In fact, this is Joe Allen tweeted this the other day about, reminds me of locusts with faces like men and tails like scorpions.
我中国人民解放军有足够的力量
Those are drones.
扫除一切障碍。
And so when you read a passage like Ezekiel 38:39, where it says, I come up like a cloud against the land, is this what Ezekiel saw? Could be. Certainly, it was much harder to understand how this might apply, what Ezekiel was seeing before the drones developed, and the drone technology is going crazy. There's also a lot going about. This was a conference in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia this week. Cash-based society hampers fight against financial crime. Experts at Forum in Riyadh call for financial inclusion to encouraging opening of bank accounts. Law enforcement needs to build capacity to be faster than criminals. So there's this war going on, and the thing you should take away with it is they're trying to mess with the financial system, trying to take control of the financial system to control people. And when you read Revelation 13, when it talks about this person who comes at the end who controls the financial system, you cannot buy or sell without a mark in the hand or forehead. That's kind of interesting. And then this is an article from Financial Times. Can banks really fix the climate crisis? There's lukewarm evidence so far. So first of all, the question would be, is there really a climate crisis? I saw sometimes comedians are pretty wise. And what they say, because what they say is truth, it stands in such contrast to what people in charge actually believe and do. It's funny in a way. It's tragic and concerning in a lot of other ways. And one of this comedians said, well, you know, I noticed in my life, he's like 80 years old, he goes, that every summer it got warmer. And every winter it got colder. And then summer came again and it got warmer, and the world didn't end. So, you know, there's all these people, and they're using it to cause a crisis so they can go around and control everything. And banks are doing this. I mean, like I said, I get notices from our electricity provider, hey, you're using more than your neighbors. Can we help you cut back? Well, I'm buying power from you. What do you care? I mean, why are you so concerned about it? Plus, I'm semi-retired. We're home. We're going to use more because we're home all the time, right? We have neighbors around us. We've lived there 4 years. I've seen them like 2 times. And I drive by their house 4 times, 5 times a day. You would think that I would see them. And so every now and then I'll come home and say, hey, you know that house that's our backyard's almost touched? Saw somebody there today, because it's a big deal. And amazing, I saw somebody cutting the grass there yesterday when I came home from golf. So that's okay. Now we talk about lawlessness in the last days. This is from the Times of London. Bail hearings delayed as prisons run out of cells. There seems to be more people in jail. That kind of brings up the thought I remember about the headlines in the Los Angeles Times. Increased prison population, a concern in light of falling crime rates. Maybe those are connected, the editorial board of LA Times. Did you ever consider that the falling crime rates might be related to an increased prison population? Like, because you put the criminals in jail so they can't do things. But that never occurs to these people. And I don't know who said it, Dennis Prager or something, is, some of the ideas you see in public life these days are so idiotic. You know that the people have had to be educated to come up with those conclusions, because you would not come up with them if you were just a natural, average, normal thinking person. It would never occur to you that some of these ideas are valid. Here's one. This is Kosovo. Flirts with same-sex marriage. Now, I point that out because a conservative, I think, Islamic country, Muslim country, and they're considering this. So apparently there are even apostate Muslims. But down here, look at this. Whoops. The wrong way. There's this rock star. Pristina's young people, I guess that's her fans, define themselves by the British Albanian pop star Dua Lipa. Oh, I guess Pristina, that's the pride group. By the British Albanian pop star Dua Lipa rather than the warlords of the conflict era. Pop culture has a lot of influence. I wonder if that Kansas City kicker will be in the wedding party if his teammate ever marries Taylor Swift, if they get married. Okay, so we're going to look at the Middle East now. This is related. Secret Hamas papers reveal Hamas plan to set up base in Turkey. So Turkey's very tied into Hamas. Turkey is clearly a player in the end times, and I put up that graphic many times about that looks like a version of Ezekiel 38 map that a lot of my friends use at Bible prophecy conferences when they talk about Ezekiel 38. I'm like, well, just go to Erdogan's, one of his newspapers that supports him. They've got a graphic that's better than anything you've put up. And that's not a slam against them. It's just that, why don't you just go to the source when you see that? And so they're now coming out that 1,000 injured Hamas from the war in Gaza have been treated in hospitals in Turkey. Now, how's that possible? Israel's invading, and we can't get in, we can't get food in. But 1,000 Hamas fighters have left Gaza and gone to Turkey to get rehabilitated in hospitals. It seems that something's going on, right? That leads to a lot of questions. Look what this article says. The printed document headed founding a base in Turkey was found in the home of Hamza Abu Shanab, a chief of staff to Yinyar Sinwar, Hamas's leader in Gaza, the Israelis claim. It describes efforts by Israel to clamp down on the Gaza Strip over the past decade that have put Hamas on the defensive. As a result, according to the plan's unnamed author, there's no choice but to act with major effort to establish military hubs, which will be the base for special operations that can strengthen the forces of resistance militarily, diplomatically, and morally. Interesting, they use the term moral and diplomatic. October 7th, nothing diplomatic or moral about October 7th. Therefore, we need to establish a security branch abroad which will be capable of carrying out our intelligence and military operations in the future. Erdogan told Muslim scholars in Istanbul that Hamas had accepted a ceasefire proposal by Qatar, and Egypt, and a step and a path towards a lasting fire. And then it says, yesterday Erdogan said that more than 1,000 members of Hamas were being treated in the hospitals across Turkey, and reiterated his stance that Hamas was a resistance movement. Okay. So now there's this. This is big news. Prince Charles had a painting done of him. And you can see this thing was unveiled. Here's a little video of it being unveiled, and it's sort of like it scared him even, I think, or repulsed him. And it's like, what is up with this thing? This is a hideous painting. Now, there are some in the Bible prophecy community that think that King Charles is the Antichrist. They look at his heraldry, his name. Supposedly, if you do the value numbers, I'm told, I haven't figured it out, that totals up to 666 in 3 different languages. And somebody just told me that last night. And so it's not a view that I hold, but we don't know yet. Let's be honest. We don't know yet. And it's kind of interesting because what are the prominent features that you see in that painting? Well, there's 3 that you see. You see the hand and the forehead, right? Does that bring to mind any scriptures? And then on his right shoulder is by the way, it's his right hand that's there. There's a butterfly. Now, if you look, I didn't pull the graphics out. He's started these organizations. One is called Terra Carta, to take care of the earth. And it seems that, this guy has kind of a big idea of himself. I'm taking care of the earth, so I'm going to start an organization. Here I am in London, where there's residents. In fact, somebody tried to destroy it last week, some protesters. The Magna Carta, one of the great documents of Western civilization and freedom and that sort of thing, at least foundational. And I've seen it at the British Library. He starts an organization called Terra Carta. Now that seems to be someone who's pretty impressed with himself. So there's this organization, and they sustainable-markets.org, I think is their websites, and they're tied into the climate change, and we're going to control everything, and you need to stop eating meat and all of these things. Or at least let us develop genetically modified cows that don't burp or expel gas from the other end. And we're going to fly around in our private jets to tell you that how much carbon you're putting into the atmosphere by eating a steak. But so here, as one person said, it looks like a sea of blood, or it looks like the flames of hell. I mean, that's how people look at it. So here's and so what somebody did was they took 2 of those images, put them side by side, and reversed the one. Then they flipped it over, and this is what you see. And the question is that intention? Was that an accident? It looks like Baphomet, a satanic goat's head. You see the horns there, which are the hands, and then the face. I mean, that's a common satanic symbol. So I don't know. Now, there's a thing this week called the Israel Summit. The Israel guys and Hayabel, a Christian organization that helps get people to volunteer in Israel. We're doing a summit at the airport Sonesta Hotel. So here's the thing that comes from this, is never stay at that hotel. They canceled the Israel summit. So people are coming, they're expecting 500 people. I'd love to be going, but I've got other things this week. And they're going to have speakers like Michelle Bachmann and Carolyn Glick, and other people are going to speak at that. And it's a pro-Israel conference. And so the pro-Hamas people, the pro-Palestinian people called up the hotel and said, is it really safe for your hotel to be holding this? Because, something might happen. And so the hotel canceled. Now, Dave Ramsey has a financial center with meeting rooms or whatever down there, and he stepped up and said, hey, come over here. And this comes on the week that this was the 76th anniversary of the War of Independence and the Declaration of Independence of Israel. A big deal. I mean, and I've been there when they celebrated this. And this year it actually fell on the exact, every 19 years it's on the exact date, because the Hebrew calendar kind of operates on a different thing. So we were there in May once, and they were celebrating the 50th anniversary of the June 1967 war, even though it was in May. They have a day called Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day. And if you can ever go at that time, it's a great time to be there. It's very festive. And so this is the headlines from the New York Times. Zionists proclaim new state of Israel. Truman recognizes it and hopes for peace. Tel Aviv is bombed. Egypt orders invasion. So it started then. The Palestinians call that Nakba Day, Catastrophe Day, because that's when they left. Hundreds of thousands of them left because the Arab army said, hey, leave for a little bit and we'll bring you back when we win the war. But they didn't win the war. And so now here we are, 76 years later, they're still not back. By the way, at the same time, almost every Jew left Arab countries, Morocco, Iran, Iraq. They used to have thousands and thousands of Jews. Today they have, in some cases, they have 5 Jews left in a country of millions of people. Nobody, by the way, anybody protesting about that? About the Jews being kicked out of the Arab lands, having to leave, flee for their lives, and leave everything behind. And the whole thing, and I even saw a report this week that in the pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas narrative, they say, well, we had our Nakba Day first, then Israel started celebrating Independence Day. It's completely opposite of what the historical facts are. Nakba Day didn't come up for 20 years or more. But now they say, well, we celebrated it first. Israel's stealing from us. It's crazy. I've mentioned this many times. I sat next to a Palestinian guy at a Christ at a Check of the Point conference. He was the featured speaker that evening. He's a cancer surgeon, lives in Toronto now, had lost several children in a mortar strike, a misfired rocket or whatever in Gaza back in 2008 or 2009. 3 daughters and a couple nieces. And very tragic for him. I mean, we feel on a human level, we feel for him. But I ask him questions. I'm like, doctor, I drive around. I've been in Jordan. I've been up in what you call the West Bank. I've been in Nablus. I've been in other places. And there are these refugee camps. Yes. Well, they've been there at the time, that was probably 2018, they've been there for 70 years. But I look right next door to them, there's luxury apartments, there's nice houses, but these people are being kept in refugee camps. Oh yes, the occupation, where they're forced to live there. But there's luxurious places in Gaza. Why do you have these refugee camps? Why do you go to Jordan, which isn't occupied by Israel, and there's refugee camps? Why do you go to Syria, Lebanon, all these other places? Well, it's the occupation, John. I'm like, how do you discuss something with somebody like that? Obviously a very intelligent guy, but completely blinded to what the truth is. So this week there was a hearing in front of the International Criminal Court in The Hague. And I'm going to play a couple clips of one of the Israeli lawyers who's making a presentation. Their main team wasn't allowed to participate, and the South Africans blocked some of the evidence that they wanted to submit to the court for this hearing. And then the South Africans got up and said, well, they didn't submit anything to the court. Well, you blocked it. It's almost like, are they the same team that's running these prosecutions in New York City and elsewhere right now? I'm telling you what, I'm a lawyer. We are seeing a complete breakdown in our judicial system with these prosecutions. And I would say in Israel, the prosecutions against Netanyahu, I would put into the same category. By the way, it's what year is it? 2024, right? When did Netanyahu get indicted? 2019. So I was there in 2022, and I asked the people, when are these things going to wrap up against Netanyahu? Because he's not allowed to do certain things. So you can serve in office, but you're not allowed to do these things. Well, it's 2024. So late 2022, December 2022, I was told they could go on for another 5 years. 5 years? When you hear answers like that, it seems to be that the whole thing is sort of political, not sort of, kind of, maybe. It is definitely political. And we're seeing the same thing in the United States. And as Mike Davis at the Article 3 Project says, what they're doing to the former president are republic-ending prosecutions, the way these are being conducted. It's shocking to me as someone who, was careful. I follow rules of procedure and that sort of thing. So in the secret documents case down in Florida, I think there's very good evidence that the prosecution tampered with the evidence and handled them in a manner that they're accusing former President Trump of doing. It's President Biden, there's a thing called executive privilege. President Biden waived that with respect to the Trump administration. When the House tried to subpoena things from Biden this week, he said, oh no, executive privilege. Well, wait a minute. So it's okay for your political opponent to have things released that are executive privilege because you waived it, but you're going to protect yourself with executive privilege. As I've said before, if hypocrisy was water, the world would drown. It would be another Noah's flood. So here are this lies. So here's just a few minutes of the Israeli lawyer speaking about some of the things going on. And I have one clip of the male lawyer who's speaking.
As you have just heard, Israel is still under attack. We are still counting more and more of our dead and attending 2,000 more who are wounded. No less than 132 children, women, and men are still held hostage in unimaginable conditions by Hamas and other Palestinian militants in Gaza. Tens of thousands of Israeli citizens are internally displaced. Most of them have not seen their homes in over 7 months. Many have no homes to return to. The very grave effect of the horrific massacre of 7 October continue to ripple through our people and communities. The State of Israel requests the court to reject the request for the modification and indication of provisional measures submitted by the Republic of South Africa.
So they had to stop the hearing because somebody was yelling in the court, a Palestinian protester or pro-Palestinian protester. And she came back later. And of course, you see when she came back, there's no sound.
That concludes Israel's presentation. Thank you.
So, but there's a transcript. You can get the whole transcript and read that. But, that's the way it goes. Now, there was a big conference this week. It was the Arab League. They met in Bahrain for a summit. This is the media line, a good journalist organization from Israel. Met the people that run this. They're very competent people. I don't even know their political leanings, but they're solid in what they report. And this is what they reported. The summit, this was before it took place a few days ago, will discuss the course of events in Gaza and will also consider a representation of the Arab initiative that was put forward in 2002, which stipulates that the Arab countries recognize Israel in exchange for the establishment of a Palestinian state within the borders of June 7th, 1967, when the Six-Day War ended. So these are papers from Bahrain and Qatar and other places talking about the summit. Arab states are urged to join the post-war Gaza force. There's a picture of all the people that were there. The Arab leaders, Mahmoud Abbas, King Abdullah II of Jordan, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman Al-Sisi of France, the head of the United Arab Emirates portion, the Dubai portion of the United Arab Emirates, and other Arab leaders were there to discuss this. Now, so there's a lot that can be said about this. So this is from I-24 News. A coalition of moderate Arab countries has put forward a comprehensive roadmap aimed at achieving the establishment of a Palestinian state within 3 years. The proposal, endorsed by about 60 senior officials from participating nations during a conference in Saudi Arabia, calls on the United States to lead an effort in outlining a clear path towards Palestinian statehood. Central to the plan is the restoration of Palestinian authority over the Gaza Strip, accompanied by significant reforms within Palestinian government structures. The roadmap also includes key provisions such as the withdrawal of Israeli defense forces from Gaza, cessation of Israeli military activities in Palestinian territories, and the establishment of essential infrastructure like airports with control of border crossings transferred to Palestinian Authority forces. Now, does this really sound like something that Israel's going to accept right now? Well, I don't know. Maybe they are. So King Abdullah was there. And of course, he's been a big supporter of the Palestinian rights. His wife is Palestinian. There's the United Arab Emirates delegation. Here's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. So this is what a right to define the future Arab League calls for: UN mission, UN military force, peacekeeping force in the Palestinian territories. And I'm sure they'll do just as good a job as they've done in southern Lebanon to enforce UN Resolution 1701, which says Hezbollah should not have any military activity in southern Lebanon and south of the Litani River. That's really worked out well, hasn't it? I've often said, if you hear, by the way, this is just sort of, you may even call it John's tidbits, one of John's tidbits. If you hear that the Palestinian or the UN peacekeeping force is coming to a neighborhood near you, lock up your women and children, because sexual abuse seems to follow them wherever they go. And they've been tried. So here's and so they came out with a Bahrain declaration. You can look it up online. Just look up for Bahrain declaration, and it will tell you, and it's a very long document, probably 10 pages. I won't go through it because I go long enough anyway as it is without reading all that stuff. But if you go to thenationalnews.com and look for the Bahrain declaration, you will find that document if you want to spend a little time this afternoon reading it. That's up to you. And this is kind of interesting. This is in the Jerusalem Post magazine this week. And I only put this forward because they looked at, okay, like what's in the Arab media? They have a section in the Jerusalem Post magazine. And it said this: the wider Middle East craves what? Peace and stability, peace and security, peace and safety. That sort of rings this. This was in the Tehran Times, the foreign minister who may no longer be with us there, second from the right. Iran embraces Arabs. So, everybody's concerned about, well, what's Iran going to do? These are articles, like New York Times, Israeli officials weigh sharing power with Arab states of post-war Gaza. This is Al Akbar newspaper in Lebanon. This is a Hezbollah newspaper, and you can see the imagery that they put in front of people all the time. Let Gaza live, and they're walking through a pool of blood. And so there are these. What are we going to do with Gaza? This is a big issue. And look, a lot of Gaza has been reduced to rubble, but I saw articles today about how the post-war, even in the rubble, the economy seems to be booming. And Israel's going into Rafah. They've been doing this. And they did find some bodies of hostages. The one gal who was in the back of the truck with the broken leg, they found her body. They found, I think, 4 bodies in Rafah, and they were killed like on October 7th. So they've been there for a while, and they found them in tunnels, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. So here's this is Al-Quds newspaper, and they have on Nabka Day, this is Hania. He's the political leader of Hamas. He lives in Qatar. I always say, I'm not sure how to say it. You know what I'm talking about. That rich place on the Persian Gulf that sponsors Hamas, and everybody acts like they're our friends. And so what he said was, any effort agreement must ensure a permanent ceasefire, complete withdrawal from the entire Gaza Strip, a genuine prisoner exchange deal, the return of the displaced, reconstruction, and lifting the blockade. By the way, he's worth about $4 billion. And you can tell he has to have that beard done every day by a barber. I mean, he's really suffering. Now, here's the situation. So this is the Tehran Times posting. There's a war in the war cabinet. So that's Gallant in the middle, Netanyahu to the left, Halevi to the right. And they're in a dispute right now. So there was a coalition put together. Gallant was brought into the war. He's the defense minister. He's in the war cabinet. Benny Gantz and Eisenkot, who's a former defense minister, is in there. And Israel's kind of unusual. In the United States, we have the commander-in-chief. I'm not sure that the prime minister is the commander-in-chief. There's still the IDF and those people that control a lot of things. But a lot of times they'll throw the blame on Netanyahu. And I'm not saying Netanyahu's blameless in this whole situation. That's not what I'm saying. So Galad came out the other day, and this is what he said. This is a video as I call on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to make a decision and declare that Israel will not rule over civilian affairs in Gaza. There won't be an Israeli military rule in Gaza, and an alternative leadership to Hamas in the Gaza Strip will be advanced immediately. It is our duty and responsibility to lead our country to a better place. Here, right now, it's on our watch. We must make tough decisions for the future of our country, favoring national priorities above all other possible considerations, even with the possibility of personal or political costs. This is a test moment for our nation. The people of Israel are watching and expect us to make the right decisions. So that's Gallant, and Netanyahu responded to that, and it's a developing story. So he says, I'm not prepared to replace Hamastan with Fatastan. After the terrible massacre of October 7th, I ordered the destruction of Hamas. IDF warriors and the security services are fighting to achieve this end. So long as Hamas remains standing, no other actor can come in to run a civilian government in Gaza. Certainly not the Palestinian Authority. 80% of the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria support the massacre of October 7th. The Palestinian Authority supports terror, educates terror, finances terror. I am not prepared to place Hamastan with Fatastan. Consequently, the first condition for preparing the ground for another authority is to destroy Hamas and do so without excuses. So that's Netanyahu. So that sets it up. So front page news everywhere. Now Danny Gantz comes out. He's also in the war cabinet. He's running for, if there's an election, he'll be running for prime minister against Netanyahu. And he comes out and says, look, unless you put something in place, implement it by June 8th, I'm resigning from the government and we'll go to elections. So now it's, well, people, I heard somebody say traitor, that it's politics in Israel. This is the way it goes. But this is in the midst of a war. And there's plenty of blame to go around. There's only been one IDF person who's resigned over the whole thing of October 7th, and there's a lot of blame that people need to take credit for. So here's a tweet. This is from Mike Duran, who's with the Hudson Institute. Minister Gantz issues an ultimatum to Netanyahu: develop a strategy designed to achieve 6 goals by June 8th, or he will resign. If this wasn't directly coordinated with the White House, it seeks to draft off of American policy, because this is what the Biden administration is pushing Israel to do, is make a settlement, get on with it, deal with Hamas or a new version of Hamas or whatever. So here's Gantz's demands: the return of the hostages, the demobilization of Hamas, and demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, determining an American, European, Arab, Palestinian, but that just sounds like, that kind of rolls right off the tongue, like that's going to really work. Alternative in the Strip that is not Hamas and not Palestinian Authority, Chairman Mahmoud Abbas, or Abu Mazen, his real name, the return of the residents of the North by September 1, and rehabilitation of the Western Negev, promoting, by the way, that'll mean the people in the North have been out of their homes for almost a year. What do you think the communities are going to be like after just sitting there for a year? Being bombed, by the way, all the time by Hezbollah. Promoting normalization with Saudi Arabia as part of a general move that includes a treaty with the free world and the Arab world against Iran. And does this sound like we talk a lot about a coming peace treaty. Does this sort of sound like people are pushing this? And here we are, by the way, normalization with Saudi Arabia is all over the news. Adopting an outline for creating a standardized Israeli national service in which all Israelis will serve the country and continue to the highest national effort. That's directed at the Haredi and Orthodox parties, ultra-Orthodox parties that they have exemptions from serving in the military. We will contribute to the state of Israel because we will study Torah and learn, develop the moral foundation for the state of Israel. That's what we do to contribute to this whole thing. You other guys, you can go fight the wars. And that may be a thing. So, so this is an article from, I believe, the Wall Street Journal yesterday. To survive, Netanyahu pacifies Israel's far right. So Netanyahu has not pushed forward legislation to require the ultra-Orthodox to serve in the military. I believe that's correct. There's been a lot of discussion about it. I don't think anything's in place. If it is in place, it's suspended. And he needs his first coalition. He has 63 votes in the Knesset. He needs 61. His coalition has 63. And as long as that holds together, it will happen. So Gantz can say, listen, I'm going to resign from the war cabinet and then we'll go to elections. But that may not be true because Netanyahu's coalition may hold together. So he will stay in power as prime minister. Here's another, Caroline Glick, her tweet this morning said this: the administration now separates between the supposedly moderate Hamas outside and the evil Sinwar. This is to pave the way for the integration of Hamas into the renewed Palestinian Authority that will lead the Palestinians in Gaza and Yash, that's the Judea Samaria, that will lead to an independent state that the government will recognize. And of course, the statements of Gallant and Gantz were both intended to promote this goal. That's what the Biden administration wants. That's what Anthony Blinken wants. That's what Jake Sullivan wants. That's what Joe Biden wants. They're all pushing for this. This is a tweet from an Israeli. A few hours before Gantz's statement yesterday, Khalid Mashal, he's a Hamas leader, said, "We are facing a historic moment and an opportunity to defeat Israel and dismantle the Zionist project." So this push for peace This is how Hamas views it. We're winning. We're killing them. We're winning public opinion. Our enemy is retreating and losing self-confidence after 8 months of a continuous angry battle to stop this aggression and the flood of sieges on the American and Israeli embassies. He added, this is a beginning of a global war against the West. Now, maybe a couple of the soldiers in that war expired this morning. The question asked is how generals in the past and present whose lives are dedicated or should be dedicated, talking about Gallant in Gantz, who was head of the Israeli Defense Force, or should be dedicated to defeating the enemy, are busy with political fantasies instead of worrying from morning to night about destroying the enemy. How is that? And in particular, how come their eyes were not open even after the murderous attack by Hamas in Simchat Torah? Joyce Karam, she's a political commentator. She said there's a political riot in Israel. What does it mean? Well, it means a lot. If Gantz actually quits, possibility of early elections. I think it's only a possibility. It's not a certainty. Little, if he doesn't quit and extends arrangement with Bibi, Saudi part brings in U.S. role as Sullivan meets MBS and talks deal. Arabs engaged with summit calling for ceasefire. So that's some of the things that go. And then look what else is going on. China hosts a reconciliation meeting for the Palestinians, Hamas and Fatah, to get together. And believe me, I've been in Judea Samaria, the West Bank, and there's tremendous support. When I was there, it's been 7 years, there's tremendous support for Hamas back in those days. They hated Mahmoud Abbas because they just feel like, he's what's now he in the 15th year of a 4-year term. So 16th year, maybe it's 18. I don't know. It keeps growing. And so here's a meeting with Hezbollah, head of Hezbollah. Oh, that article says, who says it has confidence in amended death toll from Gaza? It sounds like an Abbott Costello routine. It means the WHO. And we know they're so reliable, right? You can trust the WHO. They have confidence in the numbers coming out of Gaza. And it appears, by the way, from the numbers that came out this week, that Gaza, suddenly like 12,000 people were resurrected because they adjusted the numbers downward. And have you seen big headlines in the New York Times, Washington Post? Like maybe the number wasn't quite accurate. But the WHO, of course, we love them, and they have confidence about what's going on. This is from the National. That's from the United Arab Emirates. Okay, I'm going to play a clip. This is John Mersheimer. He's a professor at the University of Chicago, very popular on a lot of the what I would call right-wing channels, pro-Russian, pro-Hamas, right-wing channels in America. I'm going to just play maybe 1 minute of his clip. This is a talk he gave about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And so he's an expert on geopolitics, but he wrote a book, he co-authored a book with Stephen Walt called The Israel Lobby, about how Israel controls American politics through its lobby. So here he is in a speech. Listen to what he says.
Israel is the big loser. Israel is in really serious trouble today, and there's little hope of getting away from that moving forward. Second, that the Americans are also losers, although they do not lose as big as Israel does. And the winners, not in any decisive way, but the winners are the Iranians. Israel today is what I would call Greater Israel. Israel controls everything between the river and the sea. And of course, that phrase is usually associated with Hamas. And what Hamas wants is to control everything between the river and the sea, just like Israel does. And the end result is that what you have today is a Greater Israel. And that Greater Israel includes what's called Green Line Israel. That was Israel before the 1967 war, plus Gaza, plus the West Bank. Okay, so there are those.
Okay, I really will be honest with you. I detest this man. He is historically wrong on a lot of issues. He does, and by the way, for that man to stand in front of an organization, I think it was in London, at a think tank, and say, well, Hamas just wants to control things like Israel wants to control things. That is an abject lie or a completely ignorant, moronic statement, Dr. Mersheimer. I'm sorry. Hamas does not want to control things the way Israel controls things. They want no Jews. Israel's lived with Arabs for a long time. But look, there's a push by people on the right. They want to resettle Gaza. And we can argue about whether they're right on that or not. But let me just ask the question. If it was only Jews living in Gaza, would it be a better place? Honestly. So here's Washington Post this morning about the going into Rafah. This has really upset President Biden or whoever is calling this. But they said, oh, you're going to go in, you're going to kill all those people who evacuated to Rafah, right? So look at this. So this is what Rafah looked like with refugee camps on May 5th. Israel said, you guys need to leave because we're going to do an operation in Rafah. So here's what the camps look like, a satellite of the same camps 2 days later. Now, wait a minute. Biden, Jake Sullivan, Tony Blinken, they all said, that's impossible. That will never be able to happen. So we had a miracle. Maybe they were all raptured. I don't know. And I see that is a very bad joke, by the way. But look, I mean, they're all gone, right? So, by the way, here's a picture of the Rafah crossing. Look at that border wall. Double wall, moat, guard towers, all of this. That's Egypt's border wall with Gaza. It's not Israel's border wall. It's Egypt, Arab, Muslim. By the way, how many have evacuated aside from Hamas leadership? 0. How many have they taken in? 0. How many has Jordan taken in? 0. How many is Lebanon, Syria, Iraq taken in? 0. Why is that? So here's a picture. This comes from a report. So on the left, you're going to see this is the Egyptian border with Gaza. Does it look like they don't want people to get from Gaza into Egypt? Look at that. So here's the Israeli lawyer talking about what exists in Gaza at the International Court of Justice the other day.
Damage of an unprecedented scale has been caused to Israeli civilian homes and infrastructure, with entire communities destroyed. Approximately 60,000 residents of towns in southern Israel remain displaced from their homes 7 months on. It may be years before they are able to return to their homes and rebuild their communities. Sirens continue to go off across the country as rockets, missiles, and drones are launched against Israel from several fronts. Rafah, in particular, is a focal point for ongoing terrorist activity. It is a stronghold for Hamas's operatives, with several battalions belonging to the Rafah brigades entrenched in the area. Also present in Rafah is an intricate underground tunnel infrastructure that runs underneath the city and provides ample space for operatives, command and control rooms, and military equipment. Nearly 700 tunnel shafts have been identified in Rafah, from which approximately 50 tunnels cross into Egypt. These tunnels are used by Hamas to supply itself with weapons and ammunition.
So 50 tunnels cross that border, under that border into Egypt. Do you think Egypt is a good peace partner? Why are they allowing this to occur? And by the way, how much did it cost to build 50 tunnels? 700 tunnel shafts in Rafah alone. It's unbelievable. Somebody said, listen, let's talk about what the Palestinians have done in the past. Let's do a history. And so here's a list somebody made up. Look at this. 1929, Jerusalem massacre. 29, Hebron, Jaffa, Gaza, Nablus, Jenin, Accra, Tel Aviv. Look at all the 1929 attacks. Who caused those? They were instigated and incited by the Hajj Aman al-Husseini, a Muslim holy man, a Muslim imam, who worked in Europe with Adolf Hitler. Go listen to, look up Dr. Francisco Gil White and watch his videos on YouTube. You will get a very good history of the Middle East. And Dr. Gil White did one recently. I think the title of the YouTube channel is Truth of Consequences or something like that. And he talked about the fact that this is what the U.S. government and the eugenicists wanted to get rid of the Jews. So when Chamberlain went to Munich and got the agreement signed by Hitler, and everybody came back and said, peace in our time, what he was really doing was, okay, eugenicists, we've bought you some time. Continue your work to get rid of these unfavored races. That's what was done. And the U.S. government has pushed this through all of our administrations, favoring Iran. Now, whenever they get caught, they say, oh, well, we made a mistake. And Dr. Gil White makes a very interesting point. Okay, you say you made a mistake, but how's come all of your mistakes favor Iran? That leads me to conclude that that's what you were trying to do all along, is get Iran in charge of all of this. And then Mike Benz Cyber on Twitter. He's got about a 12-minute video up. He talks about how all of these people in our government are getting enriched by gas deals throughout the Middle East. And I've talked about, remember Amos Hochstein? Shut down the Israeli gas pipeline to Europe. And then all of a sudden, here comes a company that he was an executive vice president for. Hey, we can supply Europe when we cut off the Russian gas. We can supply Europe with our liquefied natural gas. And he did that gas deal with Lebanon. That was supposed to result in billions of dollars of revenue for the Lebanese government. By the way, a French company called Total has gone in and they've drilled in those gas fields. So Israel's got this really productive gas fields in the Eastern Mediterranean. Right across this fake Lebanon border that Amos Hochstein negotiated with the Lebanese government is Lebanese gas fields, and they've been drilling in those blocks right next to the Israeli productive blocks. And guess what's happening? All they're getting is water and sand. This is where the charismatic part of me wants to come out and say, maybe they'll talk about that at the Israels. I'm going to write an article about that if I ever have time. So here's the Palestinians, and it talks about they entered Lebanon, they entered Jordan, they entered Syria, they entered Egypt, and nobody wants them. They want them trapped in Israel. By the way, this is from 2004, Jerusalem Post. IDF mauls a moat on the Gaza border. That was back in 2004. Here's Israeli settlers demand a right to move into the Gaza Strip. They were forced out, drugged from their homes back in 2005. You should go read this article. I don't have time to go through it. Tablet Magazine, there's a few sites you should follow. Jerusalem Post has a lot of good stuff on it. The friends who write for that, they're excellent authors, Seth Fransman, Jonathan Spire, other people, and some of their security people. But they kind of cross the political spectrum. Tablet Magazine is excellent. Lee Smith is superb. Tony Badrin writes for Tablet Magazine. Mike Duran writes for Tablet. So look, this is Sinwar in exchange for Rafah. Well, if you give us Sinwar, we'll make Israel stop going into Rafah. And they talk about that. Excellent article. Barak Ravid this week, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman met in Tehran on Saturday with White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and discussed the semifinal draft strategic agreements between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, which both parties are close to finalizing, the Saudi state news agency said. So this normalization thing is on track. They're talking about it. This is a Hebrew thing of his translation. And they're saying that bin Salman and Sullivan, they're doing this, they're pushing forward with this. Here's the Saudi news agency website. His Highness receives the American National Security Advisor. They talked about it. And so that's all over the Saudi press right now. And somebody tweeted this. They saw what Mohammed bin Salman was doing, and what did they say? Middle East commander. It's kind of just interesting in light of all the things we read about it in the scriptures and that type of thing. And then this was also in the Saudi news agency Twitter account this morning. King Salman is hospitalized. Now they're saying it's for medical treatment, but then there are people offering prayers for him. So he may be having a health crisis right now. We're not sure. They're play it close to the vest, but he's in his 80s. And I'm just telling you that things regarding Israel and Saudi Arabia will change when he passes away. Because Mohammed bin Salman may have a very different view of how these things should be put out. So this is back to the article by Lee Smith. Talks about the U.S. We must have known about all this. We didn't warn Israel. Why are we hiding this? And now the United States has come out and said, well, look, if you don't go into Rafah, we'll tell you where Sinwar is. Well, wait a minute. There are 5 Americans being held hostage, or their bodies, and our government is saying we'll give the people fighting to free them information to help them if they do something we want politically. Some political analysts in the United States say there really is a two-state solution in play. The 2 states are Michigan and Minnesota. I think that's probably right. So go read that. And then Tony Badrin interviewed some guys after Gaza. And then Mike Duran also has a great article, The Gates of Gaza. So this is Carolyn Glick the other day. Do you realize that the Air Force is emptying its stockpile of bombs in Lebanon for nothing, right? Hezbollah is disbanding the Air Force one after another, dismantling the North house by house, and we react by depleting the Air Force's stocks, truly a strategic arm. Who manages the course? Squadron 555? And so Hezbollah has been launching rockets into Israel across the northern border. There were I believe some soldiers killed near Sheva Farms, which is in the area of Tel Dan, Caesarea Philippi. That's Sheva Farms right there. And by the way, this is the Litani River. So Hezbollah is not supposed to do anything there, and they do everything there that they want. And so this is lost track of where I am in my presentation. So there, and you see all those crosshatched, those are all communities that have been evacuated. Actually, it's more than that. 80,000 people don't live in the north like they used to. Here's a Hamas commander that was killed the other day. And by the way, the thing to note about him is he had a PhD in targeting. Okay, I mean, did you ever get a PhD in targeting? And I'm not talking about JARTs or, the darts or anything like that. That's what his PhD is in. And he was killed this week. And go to Alma, and you can read about all the things that Alma they've been doing. And so they were targeting things. This is an Alma pulled out. These are videos. These are off Al-Manar website, ALM-MANAR. It's a Hezbollah website, and you can see they have these. You can see how they've hidden these launchers and that type of thing under netting. Where is that? Here we go. And so they have them staged, they're camouflaged, and then they're able to launch them very quickly. And in the one video that they did, they kind of showed that where are they getting this stuff? And they're getting it from Iran. And so here is this was an attack on an airship that Israel used. That's Hezbollah, and they post this stuff openly now. And then there's this targeting video, and what they did was they were able to freeze the video. This is Alma Research, great organization in northern Israel. And they can show you where it was the lot it was manufactured in. They got the serial number on it. And that came from the Hezbollah video. And I don't even, economic friendship rattling the world. China and Russia are closer than ever. They're also trying to undermine the US dollar and get around that. I'll talk more about that at a later time. It's a very significant thing that's going on. And, again, I mentioned this article from the U.S. Sun about 10 steps to World War III, and you should go look that up. I think it's a pretty good analysis about how could all of this go into World War III. And then the question is, are we already at World War III? And we're just in the early stages of it. And the answer is, we may be in the early stages of World War III. Putin's threatening nukes. They said if France sends in troops, they'll use tactical nukes. Everything could unwind that. And Russia is doing missile firing exercises off Baja California this week. That's kind of provocative. They've closed the airspace there. So I think it's safe to say that there's a lot going on. And the world is very volatile. God is in control. But it's probably been 4 hours now since Raisi's helicopter went down. And who knows what's going to happen today? Make sure you're right with the Lord. That's what you need to do. So let's pray. We'll get out of here. Lord, thank you for the day. Thank you so much for allowing us to live at this time of history, prophetic history. And Lord, we just pray that you'll help us to be wise, to be able to help others to understand what's going on, and that it's all part of your grand plan and that you're in control of everything. Pray that you'll bless us this week, give us opportunities to share the gospel. In Jesus' name, amen.